Vintage Model Steamboat Part 3, dismantling and repairing the boat stand, replacing the rusty propeller shaft and refitting the pressure gauge siphon. This old boat stand is a bit of a mess, and yes, I could make a new one, but that's not the point of the restoration. I'm going to repair this one, and the first thing to do is to take off this cloth. And I was surprised to find that underneath the cloth were lots of mahogany chippings to act as a cushion. One side of the boat stand is sort of okay, and the other one is broken like this. Luckily, I have the part that came off it. In this clip, I'm attempting to pull out the tacks that held the cloth in place, and this proved to be a more difficult job than I thought it was going to be. But in the end, I managed to pull out most of them. When I've finished this repair, it will probably look okay, but for the moment it's looking a whole lot worse than it did. In this clip, I'm drilling 3 holes in the broken piece to take 3 pieces of dowel. There's been some sort of an attempted repair on this part in the past, which as you can see wasn't successful, but my repair is going to be successful. Here you see the principle. The 3 dowels are not a tight fit in the holes. This allows for some adjustment. The next step is to stick the parts back together. And for this I'm using JB Weld. This is so over the top for this job, but it's great stuff. It's a special 2-pack epoxy mix, and apparently it has some steel particles in it. I'm using a generous amount of JB Weld, which will bridge the gap between the dowels and the holes that I drilled in the original wood. This is intentional, it's not bad workmanship. This joint is going to be very strong. I purposely didn't drill the holes tight because I didn't want to put any pressure on any of the mahogany. Plus the mahogany wasn't in the best condition, so I'm making sure there's no chance of splitting the old wood. Once the JB Weld epoxy resin has cured, this part's never going to fall off again. After smoothing off the JB Weld to fill the gap between the 2 pieces of wood, I held the part in position using 2 pieces of masking tape and a spring clamp. And this arrangement should hold the part in the perfect position until I remove the clamp and the tape tomorrow. Sorry, I forgot to mention that this is 24-hour JB Weld. This part of the job I was never looking forward to right from the beginning when I first started assembling the steam plant for the boat. Somehow I need to get the centre line of the crankshaft to line up with the prop shaft, and I really can't be doing with this arrangement. All it is a spring, soft soldered to the original propeller shaft. You may be thinking, well, what's the problem, just pull the propeller shaft out? Yes, that would be great. The original propeller shaft is very rusty indeed, and it will not pull through. Even when I use my electric drill as shown, I still can't get the prop shaft out. The spring soon became detached from the propeller shaft anyway. In the end, I had to remove the prop shaft tube from the boat entirely, and finally managed to pull out the extremely rusty propeller shaft in the lathe. Once I'd done that, while I was at the lathe, I made a new prop shaft. This is a piece of 3/32 of an inch diameter steel. I drilled the brass fitting to 3/32 of an inch and fitted it to the shaft using a grub screw and some Loctite 603. Originally, this brass fitting was a hexagon shape, so once I fitted the brass coupling, I reduced the diameter of it in the lathe. I also had to trim some of the wood around the propeller shaft to accommodate the new coupling. Here I'm vacuuming up all the debris. I've temporarily fitted the propeller and it seems to be fine. It rotates very smoothly, which is more than the last propeller shaft did. I'm really glad this job's out of the way because it's really bothered me for quite a while. On the inside of the boat you can see the arrangement, and you can see how close to the wood the propeller shaft coupling actually is. These brass fittings use this type of coupling. It's a universal joint. This should work fine if I align the engine perfectly with the prop shaft, and it's looking good. After test fitting the steam plant in place, I repaired the paintwork inside the boat in the area of the propeller shaft. The next job is to find out why the pressure gauge doesn't work, and to do this I need to remove the banjo fitting. The pipe that connects the pressure gauge to the banjo union is called a siphon, and the condensed water inside the siphon stops the pressure gauge from being overheated by the steam. Here's a close-up of the banjo union. You can sort of see why it's called a banjo union, I suppose. There's a hole down the middle of this fitting and a hole drilled in the side. This in turn holds this ring firmly to the boiler. I can see what the problem is. The hole is bunged up with some sealant, which I quickly unblocked using a small safety pin. It's time to give you the usual warning about refitting pressure gauges. always make sure you have a spanner on the square part of the pressure gauge as well as another spanner on the union nut. Time for a quick compressed air test. Yes, and now the pressure gauge is working fine. I think on this steam plant I'll set the safety valve to 60 pounds per square inch. This will be plenty. You saw how fast the engine ran in the steam test, and I think that's plenty fast enough. After all, this is not a speedboat. And that's it for this episode. I'd like to say stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my main Steam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.